Hello and welcome back to my RC channel. Today I'm going to do a review of the Turnigy SK450 quadcopter. Now this one is unusual because it looks like I have scratch built it, but I haven't. It comes ready to fly like this. And the reason I say it's unusual is there's a lot of work that goes into building one of these. Now some of you may have seen my scratch build 450 quadcopter. That took a long time to get built, so not sure what kind of profit they're making on this because you can get it really cheap. You can get it for about £120, I think, ready to fly. Now, there is a bit of a story with this one. As I say, I went and built a quadcopter from scratch, so you might be wondering, why did I buy one ready to fly? Well, actually, I'm not a big fan of building. That may surprise some of you because a lot of my channel is about building quadcopters, but I'm more interested in the flying side of things. So before I went and built a scratch-built quadcopter, I wanted to buy this one, and I bought it from Hobby King, and I bought it in about December 2014, I think, and a month passed and it never turned up, which isn't unusual for Hobby King, and I have had a run-in with Hobby King in the past with stuff not turning up, so I should have learnt my lesson really, but I couldn't pass on this one because of the price. Anyways, after about 5 months of the thing never turning up, I raised a dispute and I got my money back. In the time that I was waiting for this to turn up and the dispute going and everything, and it never actually did turn up, I ended up reading about building my own quadcopter, and that is where that video came from. But then on eBay, one of these came up, brand new out of the box, never used, and also in mode 1 and really cheap, so I couldn't pass on it. So I kind of thought that for the channel I would get one, I'd review it, and we can add parts to it. We've got these multi-star motors here. Those are 2213 and 935 kV. So really nice motors there, and we've got the multi-star ESC's 20 amp, which you can add a 4-cell to, no problem. You also get the KK2 board with it, and also this transmitter as well. But I have to say, after receiving this version with the transmitter, I wish I had have gone for the plug and fly version. That means that you don't get the transmitter with it. At the time I was researching this, I wasn't an expert really on radio gear, but since then I have read up a lot more about it, and I probably would have bought this and the Turnigy 9X to go with it. However, I wouldn't have bought it from Hobby King. I had such a problem with Hobby King, and I ended up raising a PayPal dispute because Hobby King just were not sorting out the problem. They said like, oh, it'll be 2 months for us to raise a dispute, whereby, you know, the PayPal would have run out and things like that. So I got a refund from PayPal. I would just stay clear of Hobby King. This is the third item that I have had go missing from Hobby King, and I've had to raise a PayPal dispute. To anyone out there buying from Hobby King and your stuff isn't turned up, raise a dispute through PayPal. Don't raise it through Hobby King because they will let it run out and you won't be able to get your money back. So yeah, always go through PayPal, and I've learned my lesson. I'm not going to buy any expensive products from Hobby King. You know, buying like 20 quid products and batteries and stuff, it doesn't really matter if those go missing, and I've tended to find that it's the expensive products that seem to go missing. Who knows? Anyways, so this is the ready to fly kit. However, you do need a battery and a couple of other things that I would advise as well. So I got 2 batteries for this. This is the Turnigy 2.2, that's the 2200 milliamp battery, and of course it doesn't come with a charger as well, so you can check out my channel for a decent charger. I recommend the B6 AC V2 charger. This battery works quite well, and standard with this you get about a 9-minute flight, which is quite nice, but I also bought this one as well. This is a Zippy 3-cell, these are both 3-cell I should say, 20C, 3000 milliamp there, and that gives gives me a good 14 minutes flight. You also want to invest in one of these as well. This is a voltage checker. Now, the KK2 board does have a voltage checker on board, but it's not that straightforward. I did do another video on my channel showing how to hook up the voltage checker on the KK2 board, but it's not very good. It's not accurate at all. I found that a fully charged battery here, which on a 3-cell should come to 12.6 volts, was showing us 13 volts on there. So you can attach like a voltage buzzer and a voltage, light straight to the KK2 board, but I wouldn't recommend it. If, however, you still want to go this route, even though I don't recommend it, what you're going to need is one of these leads, because the KK2 board only receives its power from the ESCs, and these are 5-volt BECs. So what you find is when you start up the KK2 board, you get a voltage reading of 0, which I was quite disappointed with. I don't think that's going to show up there on the camera. So I did investigate it, and yes, you do need one of these cables, and what it does is you connect your battery here to one side of it, and then that gives you a JST out connector. This can then go into the KK2 board here, like so. And then when you plug this into the quadcopter, then it's going to give you your voltage reading. And if you want, you can get one of these buzzers here. Just search it on eBay. I made up my own here with the JST cable. I don't use it. It's not accurate enough. But if you want an all-in-one system, then by all means try it. But I much prefer these. They cost like £1 off eBay, and they're much more accurate. Okay, so let's look at the transmitter, because in pictures it looks like quite a nice transmitter. However, in reality, it's extremely noticeable that this thing is tiny. Now, if we compare it to the WL Toys V666 quadcopter transmitter, which is a very cheap transmitter, but it gives you an idea of the size here, because usually hobby transmitters are more this size. It is tiny, and also it's very cheap feeling as well, and has very limited controls, and the trims are also easily knocked. Now, Hobby King sells this on their website for £16 with the receiver, so that gives you an idea of the quality. It doesn't have many controls, and these reverse switches here get knocked, and that happened to me once when I was storing this and I didn't notice, and I took off and crashed the quadcopter, so bear that in mind. You've got the on switch here, and this goes a very, very dim green when it switches on. You're going to want to turn this on before you turn the quadcopter on. And then you've got these two switches here. Now, this one is your rate, so when it's flipped up, you've got rate on, but you need to be so careful, right? Because the rate works for every single control, even the throttle, and I accidentally caught this once. And I thought, oh, my battery's running out. I hardly had any throttle, but it wasn't. It's because the rate works on the throttle. So be very careful of that. And then the other switch is the stability switch. So it corrects the angles when you let go of the stick. Now, this thing did fly out of the box, but not very well, so I have made a couple of modifications to get it flying better. I've still not managed to dial in properly the KK2 board. I think the KK2 board is limited, and we'll get onto that a bit later. But one thing that I had to do in my first flights, I noticed that I was getting a vibration noise, and I was worried that it was one of the motors, but it wasn't. What it actually was this cage here at the top. There was a slight play in it here, so what you can see I have done is I have added a cable tie all the way around and tightened it up so that no longer moves. Also, the receiver here was loose, so I have had to hot glue it there. It was just attached by some sticky back foam, and I think in the heat and the travel there, it has just come loose. A couple of other things I noticed as well is not all of these screws had Loctite on them. Loctite is used so that the screws don't come loose from the vibration from the motors. So I have actually lost a couple of screws here, and I've gone in after with an Allen key and tightened them all up. So even though this has come ready built, it wasn't built quite as good as it should have been. One thing that I like about it, though, is these green arms here. They've, little touches like this. They've used green cable ties here and black cable ties just to match the color scheme. I really like that. These arms do flex, you can see there, but I don't think it causes much problems with the flight. Now, the props, right? It comes with 10-inch props and it comes with 8-inch props. And I made the mistake because I didn't know anything at all about propellers, really. I put the 10-inch props. I thought bigger is better, right? But you don't need the 10-inch props. In fact, it was almost impossible to get it to tune and fly properly with the 10-inch props. It was all over the place. I then went onto the SK450 forum on Facebook, and a chap nicely advised me that I should try it with the 8-inch props. I don't know why I didn't try that in the first place, but then it flew much, much better. Another nice little touch is the tops here of the motors. They're green. I just love the whole color scheme. It's really nice. However, if you're flying around near trees or below the horizon, this green is a lovely camouflage, but I don't really care so much about that. Also, this is a little bit, flimsy as well. This is the aerial to the receiver. I'm definitely going to replace all this eventually, and I think the controller board. So the controller board, I've got it plugged in. Then you can see 0.0 volts. I'm not going to use that. Got these 4 buttons here, and it's pretty self-explanatory, and I could show you my P gains and my setup because I did fly this and the thing just fell out of the sky. So the standard settings, they say that it's ready to fly, but it didn't fly very well. So I'm just going to show you my settings, but you may find that it doesn't work. I found that you could build an identical quad and the gains need to be different. So if you go into menu there, and then PI editor, and then this goes up and down. And so I've got my P gain set at 25 at the moment, which is quite low, but I've got it set for carrying the heavier battery. And also I have attached my Xiaomi Yi camera, which we'll get onto in a bit. Basically, you just fly it. You start off with this P gain and you fly it until the thing starts to oscillate, and then you drop it down until the oscillation stops. So the P limit I've got to 100. There are loads of videos out there on how to tune the KK2, so I'm not really going to go into that. This is just what I have found out of the box. And then the I limit set to 50. I'm going to go back. And then you can do a receiver test to make sure that's working. Stick scaling. Now I have changed this because I like my quadcopters quite twitchy. I've got the roll set to 50, the pitch set to 50, the yaw set to 86, and the throttle set to 90. But that's completely up to you. That's just basically how twitchy things are gonna be. MISC settings. Again, you can copy these if you want, but I haven't really changed much in there. Let's go back. Self-level settings, I've got the P gain set to 96 and the P limit set to 123 and nothing on the trim. And that's it really, that's all I have changed. I mean, you'll probably see my settings there and say, well, that's why he's struggling to get it dialed in. But I have found with just a battery, and if you press that, by the way, it saves the settings and goes back. I have found that with just the battery, it flies quite nice with these settings. But when you start to add cameras and stuff like that, that's when it starts to affect the flight characteristics. So, yeah, I would say probably don't copy mine. Just fly it and change these settings until you're happy with it. For me, because I have experienced the CC3D flight controller, it performs so much better and it's so much easier to get flying. I'm definitely going to switch this out with the CC3D, but if you don't want to do any of that, this is all pretty much ready to fly. Of course, with the KK2, you can't add things like GPS. There's no altitude hold, so it's kind of limited there, because eventually with this, I want to add a gimbal to it, and we'll talk about options for that a bit later. So I'm not going to add FPV for this video, but as you can see, we're quite limited here what we can do with FPV, and I think the makers of this realized that. And what you can do is you can buy something called a dead cat kit, which I have got here. And it basically adds a camera platform to the front. These are the top and bottom plates, which you can replace, and it makes these front arms twist out so you don't get the props in view. This was about £19, again, off eBay, not Hobby King. So that may be a different video for a different day, but there is also other options for adding FPV as well. I'll get into that into a bit, but what I'm going to do for this video is I'm going to just add this Xiaomi Yi camera. This is my favorite camera. I mean, it's GoPro quality camera for 45 quid. You can't argue with it. What I'm going to do, because this captures footage really nice and it even captures props really nice. You don't get a horrible view of the props. So for this flight, just to demonstrate it, I'm going to attach this to the front there. This is a tripod screw. This is one of those sort of tripod spacers here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put this through here like that so that we get a little bit of vibration dampening, but it doesn't really need any vibration dampening whatsoever. I think this being a more sort of premium kind of motors and also ESCs means that we get less vibration. These props are not balanced at all, but I don't think we're going to suffer vibration problems like I do on my Scratch build. So that goes in there like that and sits quite nicely on top. So I mentioned FPV options before with the Dead Cat kit, but this is what I am using. This is a undercarriage here, and you can see there it holds a gimbal at the front, and that's what I plan to do with this. I've already done some gimbal work, and what you can do here is add these plates here, and they literally just cable tie to the bottom of the SK450 like that, or you could screw them in if you're after a more permanent option. But you are going to need a 4S to lift this because it does add a fair amount of weight, and you can probably put the 10-inch props on there as well, but it does lift with the 8-inch props. I think the higher KV motors mean that it does suit a slightly smaller prop, so I've been doing that. But anyways, that's enough of that. This is for the future where we can add FPV and change out the flight controller. For now, let's just see how it flies out of the box. You're right to arm the quad, and then a red LED shows on the controller board and you can go flying. And to disarm the quad, you hold in the opposite, which is the left yaw, and then the light on the controller board turns off and you get a safe message on the controller board. Now, once you have connected your battery and your transmitter is turned on, I have connected the voltage checker to the balance port there, and I set it so that it's at 3.7 volts per cell. I think that's important. You don't want to go and ruin your battery. So we've got some flight footage here from the outside. I try to get some nice passes. I just love that sound of the blades. When it turns into the wind, you get a lovely sizzling sound from the propellers. Some more nice passes there. So, when I was researching buying this, I watched a few videos, sort of, out of the box videos, and some people mentioned that it wasn't bound to the quad, the transmitter, but mine was, so maybe they listened to that issue because that wasn't a problem. However, I do think if you have that, it is quite easy to bind it to the receiver. I think you just hold the bind button when you turn the transmitter on and it looks for the receiver, but again, I didn't have that issue. So, one issue with this quadcopter for kind of like adding stuff for the future is there's no power distribution board on this quad. If you watched my build of the 450 size quadcopter, I use the power distribution board so that we can easily connect the ESCs up and also later add FPV and whatever. This, however, the ESCs are connected directly to the battery plug, so all the positive wires are connected to the positive of the battery and all the negative wires connected to the negative of the battery. So there is an option for me there as I do some stunning passes. It's really nice to fly this. I can add a power distribution board and then take the wire that is going into the ESCs and basically just connect that to the power distribution board. Shouldn't be a problem. I love doing these pirouettes here. Now, I don't have any camera attached at the moment. I'm gonna flip to the camera view in a minute. But it did fly much better without the camera. It was easier to dial in the KK2. But here we've got some onboard footage, and you can see the video is just crystal clear. The only issue is the slight wobbling in the flight, and that is because I think the extra weight of the camera at the front and the batteries. Well, I did balance the battery out. You can pick it up by that cage there on the top and make sure that it's balanced, but for whatever reason I just could not dial in the KK2 board very well to hold the camera. I mean, it still flew and it looked fairly stable on the ground. However, when I've got the footage back here, I can see that it's not quite perfect. It's buffeting and bobbing up and down. It wasn't a particularly windy day. I really love this shot though. It's very rare that I love a shot where props and motors are in view, but this is the Xiaomi Yi camera. It was actually recording at 60 FPS, although you'll be watching this in about 30 FPS. Some really nice fast footage there, and there is no vibration dampener on this. I've literally just bolted the Xiaomi to that hole in the top plate there, and I think that's telling of the components, because I wasn't able to do that with my scratch build quad at all. In fact, using the best vibration dampeners on the market, it still wasn't perfect, so I think that's a telltale sign that on my scratch build I need to upgrade the motors. And you know, these motors are very good. Some people who reviewed this said that the ESCs weren't up to scratch and the motors aren't that great, but look at this footage. I think it speaks for itself. Now, I'm kind of giving us a roller coaster ride here, but if you do sort of chill out on the flying side, you can get some really nice footage. But I seem to not want to do that. I seem to want to do lots of pirouettes, lots of fast descents. This thing just, it just feels like it wants to be flown aggressively. Not when you've got the landing gear on and stuff, but it flies so fast. And look at this here, lovely turn. It kind of feels like a racing quad in this format, and I guess it is, you know. Some more pirouettes there. Yeah, it's really fast. This is using the stabilizer mode. I don't like flying quads without the stabilizer mode. That's just my personal preference. I fly helicopters that don't have stability mode, so I can do it. I just really like the way that they fly with this auto level. It feels really natural to me. So I get quite a bit of height there and get the slight wobble that you can see here. I managed to get the camera completely directly in the middle, so a really cool shot there. Yeah, apologies if this is making you a bit sick. It is kind of like footage from a roller coaster ride. But I tended to find that if I did a flight just flying slow and kind of to get good footage, it kind of looked boring. Whereas this looks just awesome, just skimming the trees there. In conclusion then, this is a cool thing, I think. If you are not wanting to go any further than what we've got here, then it's great out of the box. However, to do what I want to do with it, I think the flight controller is too limiting. It's fine flying around like this, but if you're wanting to use it eventually to add a gimbal and get stable footage, which I have tried to do with this flight controller, you run into a problem, because when you get to a certain height, you can't tell from line of sight whether the quad is dropping up and down, and you don't get very stable gimbal footage. So what it really needs is an altitude hold mode so that you can get that stable footage. Also, when I added the legs, the landing gear, as the voltage alarm kicks in here, it flew much more stable. I think the extra weight definitely caused the flight controller to act better. I mean, it's quite a lightweight quad, this. I mean, you've got no legs, you've got no gear, it's just running at as light as possible. So adding the extra landing gear did smooth out the flying a lot. Look at this, how close to the grass I was. We've got the low voltage alarm kicking in there, so I think it's time to land. There you go, that is my review of the Turnigy SK450. Definitely watch out for more videos regarding this. I'm definitely going to switch out the flight controller, and we should have quite a nice landing here. You can see how nice the footage is when I land. I'm just going to include something extra here because I did one of my pirouettes and it screwed up with the flight controller, you see, and it kind of couldn't figure out which way was up. I think I messed with it and we have a lovely crash. Now, there were no broken props or anything like that. The thing just literally, I turned it off and on again, as we do when things break, and the flight controller reset and it flew no problem. So it's very durable as well. So there you go, that's the end of the video. Thanks for watching and please continue to subscribe. Cheers.